What's going on, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. I'm excited to be with you today. Got another fun podcast episode that I want to share with you. Today, I bring on a guest that's actually been a member of our Civil Engineering Academy coursework and community. He actually recently passed the Civil PE exam, and he's got tons of tips and tools to help you if you are going through the PE exam as well. His name is Daniel Reyes. He graduated from the Ohio State University. He is a structural engineer. He works for a company called Shirk and O'Donovan that does structural engineering. So Daniel details in this interview his process that he had to go through as a repeat taker of the exam, very similar to my own, actually. But we discuss a lot of tips, tools, and tactics to help you on your own journey to pass this exam, not to be discouraged. You know, what people think about the exam, how much theory that they thought was on there, what was most difficult about it, and things of that nature, and how this PE exam and getting it is really the springboard to the rest of your career and life. So anyway, had a great time interviewing Daniel. He's a great guy, and I think you're really going to look forward to listening to this episode, whether you're just needing some motivation to take the exam or whether you're a repeat taker thinking about taking in the next one, so which I highly recommend. Anyway, you can also feel free to reach out to me if you are struggling and need help. Isaac at Civil Engineering Academy. It's actually how we connected, how I connected with Daniel, and it was really fun to talk with him about things and see where he's headed. So anyway, with that long intro, let's jump right into the content because I think you're really going to enjoy it. My interview with Daniel Reyes. All right. Welcome to the Civil Engineering Academy podcast. Daniel, how's it going?
Good. How about you, Isaac?
Hey, it's another fun day over here. I'm raising a newborn kid. I mean, my wife's basically doing all the work, but I sometimes have to balance the kid in the morning and type with one hand, even while I'm working. It's a little crazy, but new routines with new kids is what I'm seeing what's happening. So, oh man. Well, I'm excited to have you join the show today. We connected kind of over Civil Engineering Academy. You recently passed the PE exam. You've just got a lot of momentum going into your career. I'm excited for you. So I guess to kind of start at the beginning, Daniel, how did you find yourself into civil engineering? What was the beginnings of that? Why did you want to go that route?
Well, it's funny. I actually wanted to be an architect at one point. And I think because I like drawing and designing when I was younger, thought that was kind of fun. So I was gearing my career path towards something in that field. But, you know, as I got closer to, you know, my undergrad studies, I realized that I think I like the engineering side better. How does it work? That just, you know, makes it look nice and pretty, but how do we make that functional and safe for people? So I think that was kind of my segue into civil engineering. And I realized that structural was probably going to be the way for me. It just fascinated me more out of the other topics.
Awesome. Did you have any mentors or anybody you looked up to that had gone into this world? Civil engineering world?
Actually, no, I didn't really have any mentors. My parents, especially my dad, pushed me to go into a math kind of oriented field. And he told me engineering would be a good field for you to go into. I think that coupled with my background and, you know, wanted to design things, I think that kind of was a good pairing. So I think that's what put me in that direction. My parents and my desire to design things. So
yeah, that's great. That's a great combination. And knowing that in the future, you can work well with both sides, because I've heard architects don't have the greatest love for engineers sometimes.
Yeah, it's vice versa, I tell you. It's love-hate relationship. But it works.
So why don't you tell me what you do for work now? Like, where are we at now? And what do you do?
Yeah, so I work at a structural consulting firm here in Columbus, Ohio, and we do commercial type buildings, a lot of warehouse style structures, big massive footprints. We do like retail applications, some like Wendy's or Tim Hortons, those type of fast food chains, and we'll also get into some residential, multifamily, or one-off applications with homes, like actual single-story homes and things of that nature. So we get a variety of work. So it's been a nice, good change of pace for me. It's getting more technical savvy,
For sure.
developing new skills. So it's really good, and the work is varied. There's different types of work we get. So,
Were you doing anything before that?
yeah, I actually worked at a company that they did forensics type work. So
Okay.
more related to insurance, property loss, more litigation side with insurance companies. When these hurricanes or these floods, natural disasters come through, someone has to pay the damage, right?
Right.
So it's usually these big insurance companies, and so they would hire out these third-party consultants to kind of overlook, review like the damage, and from like a more of a technical standpoint, what happened, how do we get here, how do we fix it, and the costs associated with it. So
That's cool.
I was more, it was interesting. So I did a lot of estimating with a software called Exact Analysis, and it's like a tool that's pretty standard in the insurance industry for property loss. So I got to develop some skills estimating things, but it just wasn't my passion. I was more interested in the forensic side. Unfortunately, I didn't get to experience a whole lot of that, but I knew I wanted to kind of develop more technical skills and learn more about structural engineering. So that's kind of how I
Gotcha.
made it to where I am now. So,
well, it's always fun to hear people's journey, how they got into civil engineering, and what you're doing. Everyone's path's a little different, and it sounds totally like you're going in the direction you want to head. So that's exciting. Now let's dive into like the PE exam. I know you're a recent test taker of that. You recently found out the results and you've been able to pass it. Can you tell us your experience with the PE exam and maybe even touch on what you thought was most difficult?
Yeah. The PE exam is no joke. it's tough, but if you prepare for it, you can get through it. But I guess I took it. This was my third time, so I'm a repeat taker, a three-peat, I like to call it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm there with you.
But no, it was. I think just having that exam experience prior, not passing the first two times, I really buckled down and I found the areas I needed to focus on. Essentially, that diagnostics, telling you where you need to focus more of your efforts on. So it's a good tool to use. And I think the toughest part was just making the time to study and just studying the right way, making sure you're doing the right problems and not getting inundated with things you're probably not going to see, like really long, lengthy problems, even though they may be good. I think the key is to find those problems that are more geared towards a PE exam. Like there's great practice problems that I found on your website, Civil Engineering Academy, which is really helpful, especially for the morning portion. I mean, I think you said it well on your website. You get through the morning, you want to crush it or get as much as you can or correct, because it makes the afternoon that much more simple, or at least less, I guess word I'm looking for, less intense, or you can miss a few more in the afternoon and the morning. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Hey, you got it right. Yeah, we're always preaching that. You got to crush that morning portion.
Yeah.
Because it is so much easier for you than the afternoon. And if you can do that, then it's going to lift a huge weight off your shoulders. Now, you don't realize that when you're in the exam, but I'm just telling you, after you get those results sometimes and you're thinking, how did I pass? Like what? Because I totally screwed that after. And then you're like, oh,
no, I agree.
I did really well in the morning.
Right. And, there's a lot of qualitative questions too, not just quantitative. And those are tricky, especially in the morning. So I think it's just, the civil engineering reference manual is very helpful, and just tabbing that up, going through it, and all the topics that are listed on the exam specifications on the CES website. So using that, reading some of the reference material, just doing practice problems. I mean, I think that was the biggest thing for me. It was just problems and problems.
Daniel, what was your depth section?
My depth section was structural. So
okay.
It was more code-based.
Historically, the guys taking structural bring in a lot of books, a lot of reference material. What is your advice around that? Did you look at all the references you brought? Because people are going to ask this same question that are going to take, people that are taking the structural depth exam always bring this up. And so I'm curious what your experience is with the amount of resources you brought in, the time of the exam, and dealing with all that.
Right. Well, I had a suitcase full of books, more geared towards the afternoon. So yes, I brought all of them, including the very thick Ashto book, which I don't know much about. So my background is more of building structural engineering, not bridge. So, but yes, I did bring that. Honestly, I didn't really use probably half of the references I brought for the afternoon. There's a list of them, but I used probably maybe 4 or 5 of them. So you have your masonry code, you have your concrete code, you have your AISC steel code, and the wood code. Those were probably the main ones that I used.
Okay. I have a follow-up question to you on that. Okay. So the spec will always list all those references and codes and standards. Was it that you just had a lot of the standards memorized when you were plugging through a problem, and you noticed they just had to reference that because they included it as part of the problem, or was it just not even asked, do you think?
Yeah, just some of the problems or some of the references I brought just in case, because they can ask anything from any topic, any code. But when you're reviewing or studying, I should say, you recognize problems. It's pretty obvious. Like there'll be one on wood, and sometimes it's as simple as looking up a reference in the table. Sometimes it's an equation, but they don't try and disguise it. It's pretty obvious, like what they're asking for. I mean, they are known to be a little tricky, but for the most part, you'll know if it's a concrete question. You'll know if it's a steel question. You'll know if it's based on, for example, the ASCE 7, which is minimum design loads for structures. Those type of questions you'll know right off the bat. But it just depends on what they want from that particular code. So I really know you need to be familiarized with those codes, at least tabbing it up, knowing the tables look for, especially in the wood code. You have different species and different grades, and saw lumber and glulam and all that. So
don't not bring them. Have them available.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, I'd stress to bring all the reference material. Yes, it's a lot. Yes, you're going to bring a suitcase and maybe a backpack like I did. But I'd rather you have it and not need it than not have it and need it. Because then at that point, you're just guessing. And you don't want to guess unless it's a couple problems. And you're just like, I have no idea. Like I was on Ashto. There was a bridge problem. I said, I'm not sure. I narrowed it down to 2, and I said, we'll just throw up a prayer.
That's what you got to do sometimes. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that really helps people understand like the volume of stuff you're bringing in and what they really need. And I specifically remember at the time I did the geotech depth exam, and they didn't list the ASCE 7 at the time as a spec or a code book that you needed to bring in. But I remember they asked something about factored loads. And so you had to remember, 1.2 dead plus 1.6 live. But that was just something you had in your mind, you know what I mean? So they've now listed that as a spec, but it's always helpful to bring those things in. Whether you got stuff memorized or not, I think it's still good advice. I think what you said is spot on. So how surprising was these theory questions? Usually takes people off guard. Did you feel like that was a big challenge on the exam?
Yeah, excuse me. I think especially in the morning portion, the breadth exam, I had probably a handful of qualitative theory type questions, and a couple of them were geotech. And I was able to kind of narrow it down to a couple. Like I can eliminate 2 of the 4, and then I said, okay, I'm going to come back to that. And I was a little surprised, but not overwhelmed by it, because there were a lot of quantitative questions, calculation based, and those I felt a little more comfortable with because I had prepared, and I'd seen it 2 times prior. So granted, the questions are the same, but those qualitative ones can really trip you up on the exam. And I think as an examinee, and you're preparing to take it, I would say not to get stuck on those.
Right.
If you don't know what they want or what it is, if you can narrow it down to 2 possible answer choices, start, highlight it, come back to it later. Don't get stuck on them. Because I think you said it too, Isaac. The exam's also about speed. And some questions take maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Great. Those are the gimmies. Mm-hmm. But then there's some that take a little longer. You have to really think about. So it just depends on the exam and what they decide to put on it. But you will see qualitative questions. You will see quantitative. Probably more quantitative, calculation based than qualitative. But if you see those qualitative theory based ones, they can trip you up because you're like, oh, this is a calculation. Oh, no, it's not. Well, maybe it is, but it's not asking for a number. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. I see your laugh. It's you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, another common question I get, and maybe you can help me answer it, is, do you feel like the exam is tricky at all? Do they purposely try to mess with you?
Well, I will say in the morning portion, it can be a little tricky because they may ask for something that you've seen before, but in a different way, or they may put a factor in there or something that can just kind of throw you off. But if you read the question carefully and really read what it's asking for, I mean, I'm talking word for word, underline, if you can, the key components of that question and see really what are they asking for. That's one. The afternoon, at least for structural, I'd say, it can be tricky because there's so many references, tables in the codes. Like for wood, the wood code has so many footnotes under the tables. And if you don't read those footnotes carefully, it'll bite you.
that NDS stuff, man. Woo.
NDS, the ACI 318, ASC 7. I mean, there's just, it's not intentionally clear in those codes. So you have to really read and interpret it correctly. And I think that's where experience comes in, because that's why they require you in any discipline, but they require at least a 4-year minimum requirement to sit for the PE before.
And I also think sometimes, they might throw some additional information in there that's not really needed to solve the problem. So like you're saying, read through that. I always like to write down all the things they gave me before I started solving it, right? So I'll write down, the volume or what, write down all the things they're giving you, and then see what they're asking for and really see if it plugs into what you need to solve for. So, and sometimes they might have most commonly solved for things in there too as an answer selection, and off you go, and you missed some sort of conversion and it's there and you're like, yes, and it's really wrong. So watch out for that stuff.
Exactly. I agree. Watch out for that.
Okay. Well, Daniel, what advice would you have for someone repeating the exam? I mean, most people check out these NCES specification or the pass rates and they see as repeat takers. It's heartbreaking because the first time takers is like 65 to 70%. Repeat takers is half of that. So what advice would you give to people that are repeating this exam?
Well, when I say stay determined, I know it's tough because Isaac, I actually reached out to you after I took the October exam. So I took it in October 2020 of last year, and I thought I did better the first time. Excuse me. And that wasn't the case. I didn't pass, and I was just completely at a loss. You put in the time and effort, the money, and it's just to find out that you missed it and you didn't pass. And I tell you, it was devastating. Props to my wife though, because she's been very supportive. And she said, you know what? Why don't you just take it in April? Just take the next exam. I think you could get through it. And I think that was the important thing. I think it was one of the greatest decisions I say she made it because I was really hesitant. But she said, take it in April and we'll see how it goes. And, I think that was an important thing because it was still fresh in my head. I had just taken it. Everything was still fresh in my head. I had all my references. I think I just needed to, do a few more problems, just expose myself to more problems and just really focus and hone in. Okay, what didn't I do well on? And focus on those areas. But yeah, it's tough, but stay determined. Don't let the numbers, don't let that distract you. Don't let that hinder you pursuing the exam. I mean, it's a huge goal. It's something that I think all engineers should get, especially if you want to be successful in your career.
Good.
And it's easier said than done, but you really have to have that motivation, determination to persist forward. And I was able to do it. Yes, it took me 3 times, but anybody can do it. You just have to have your mind right, the right mindset. Stay focused, stay determined, use the resources, just do problems, and just, depending on what depth you're taking, make sure you have those codes. Make sure you have the references that they call out. You don't want to be caught without them. That's all I have.
That's great advice, man. You brought up a couple things there. One of them is that I'm hearing is that you really need a good support system, and your wife helped push you. It always surprises me how this exam affects other people, not just the exam taker, but it's like it can be a drag on the whole family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if your mental attitude is not right, it can really drag the rest of your circle down a little bit, and they want to be there to help you. They want you to succeed. So, they know it's important to you, and it's important to them too. And it's going to be a springboard to everything you're doing in life. And that's awesome that you had that support there. So don't give up. I can't remember what I said when you reached out to me, but if anybody, I'm always around, and I really do appreciate when people reach out to me because I love just chatting with them about what happened and just trying to be a springboard to help them realize that, you're not alone in this. We've had many people come through our courses that are repeat takers, and there's no problem with that. And I just want to help people get over that hurdle because I was a repeat taker and I understand the challenges of that and the mental hurdles, and you beat yourself up and all of a sudden you're going to the exam with a crappy attitude and you've already failed if you're doing that. So I think you had some good points there.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I appreciate you reaching out to me. Anyway,
Sure.
What's some books or resources that you have found very helpful? I know you mentioned our resources, Civil Engineering Academy, and we'll definitely link that up. But are there some other resources outside of Civil Engineering Academy you found helpful?
Yeah, I actually PPI has some really good practice exams, at least for structural. There's two full 40 question afternoon depth exams, which they were challenging, but they were really good at just kind of referencing code. Yeah. Just, getting used to those type of questions and just tabbing through your code books and knowing where to look. Problem recognition. That was key. Like we were talking about earlier, you really want to know what the question type is and what is, at least for structure, what they're asking for, what code is being referenced. So those were good. And then they also have a 6-minute solutions as well that I found helpful for the afternoon as well. So I think those were two great references. I've read online that people say 6-minute solutions are not practical because they're really long. They're not really 6 minutes long, but it's good practice because it really gets you focused. It helps hone in on those type of questions, just knowing where to look. And, it helped me. It helped me a lot. I think all 100 some problems.
Yeah.
even if I
even
didn't
if
know.
they're way difficult, it's still giving you exposure to problems. And,
Right.
they might not ask that whole thing, but a portion of it they could definitely ask. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely good advice there.
And then I also used some of the Civil Engineering Academy. You made some good YouTube videos for the morning portion, for all the different morning topics. So I actually went through those again, and those really help kind of freshen up the morning stuff for me as well. And just tabbing up my civil engineering reference manual. So that was really helpful as well, just to kind of, they were quick problems, but they were good problems. I think it kind of helped expose me to like some of the various depth questions, such as geotech and water resources, and construction too, because I had some trouble with the construction portion because those could get tricky.
That's awesome. So you used our YouTube channel. You also used some of our coursework. Is that correct?
Yeah, I signed up for the Ultimate Depth Review course, which I thought was nice, and that helped. I really liked how you had like all depth modules available. You buy one, but you get all of them. So yeah, if you're focused in geotech or construction, you can focus on that, but you also have the other topics you can use if you want to hammer out some more problems. Like if there's a specific depth or breadth portion that, for example, water resources, you can maybe do a few of those problems. Like granted, the ones in the afternoon would be a little more involved, but I think this will still help kind of keep things fresh and help you, maybe pick up a few things you weren't too sure on. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. Yeah. So I think that's kind of one of the things that distinguishes from a lot of other stuff is that we give you all of them in one course. So, take it if you need it. If you don't need it, then don't touch it. I'm always surprised at some of the emails I get because people are sometimes like, I just want the structural one only. And I'm like, yeah, but you get them all. So if you don't want them, just don't use them. But if you want to brush up on something, like you said, it's there for you if you want it. And that's taught by Andy Richardson. We are actually right in the middle of really close to updating all of that content. So it's going to look really good here very soon. So I'm excited to share that with people as we do that. But I'm glad that helped you a lot. And Andy's a good guy and he does a good job as well. So definitely check that out if you want to. It's at civilengineeringacademy.com if you want to grab that. So what are your plans now, Daniel? Now that you've passed, what does the future look like? How do you think this is going to help you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think where I'm at right now, my current company, it's a good spot to be in for me. Like I said, I'm still learning. I passed the exam. I got my PE, but in the engineering field, you're always going to continue to learn because things are changing, and you'll never know it all. Just don't be arrogant and realize that that's just how it is. But I think just the experience that you gain over the years, that's really what sets you apart from other engineers or maybe the younger ones, because then you can kind of be the mentor. So I think that's what I want to do. I want to continue to hone in on my technical skills, learn more building design, really develop that. And at some point, maybe become a mentor, help some of the younger engineers, those who are getting their EITs, those who are, getting ready to sit for the PE, maybe be like a guide for them to help them out. Because I think if I could share my knowledge and pass it on to someone else, I think that's one of the most rewarding things you can do as an engineer, in my opinion.
That's
helping the younger generation, and I think that's a goal of mine. But also, I don't know if I'll do consulting for the rest of my life. I think I'll do it for the foreseeable future. We'll see where the road takes me. I may take a step back and do something that's still in the engineering field, but maybe not as technical, calculation heavy, maybe something a little less intensive as I get older. And who knows, maybe I'll start a side hustle or start my own little consulting firm. Who knows?
Who knows?
I think
it opens the doors to a lot of different things. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you get some experience under your belt. And you'll see areas that you maybe want to dip your toe in, whether it's project management or entrepreneurship or ownership or um, mentorship, like you mentioned. Like there's just a lot of different things you can dive into that either can take you into engineering and calculations, or allow this to reach different levels that you haven't even thought about. So I think you got a good plan there. So that's good news.
Thanks.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate you jumping on the show today. This has been really fun for me to hear your experience, where you've come from, where you're going, how you got through the exam. And I think it's definitely going to inspire other people that listen to this as they go through this and kind of struggle as well. So I think being a repeat taker is nothing to shy away from. I wish more people would own that, because a lot of people don't. And, it doesn't mean you're a horrible engineer. It's just a stepping stone. And, these testing centers, testing processes are just things sometimes you have to learn how they do that. And that's a separate thing. So anyway, I appreciate it. Daniel, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out to you, maybe ask you questions or further the conversation?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Daniel Reyes, so you can look me up on there. I'm also available by email, personal email. I can send that to Isaac, or I can send that to you if you want.
Sure. If you want it in show notes, we can put it in show notes.
We could do that. I'm still part of the Facebook group with the Civil Engineering Academy, so it can be found on there. And Facebook, I'm also on Facebook, so you can shoot me a message on Messenger. And yeah, I can be reached pretty easily. And again, I encourage people, if they have questions and they want to ask me, I'm more than willing to help. And I can share my experience and even some of my reference material. I have some practice exams and stuff that I think could really help. Even if it's just for the morning portion, if you're not a structural major or taking that depth exam, I think I'm available to help if I can. So
awesome.
Feel free to reach out.
Okay, we'll go ahead and link that. And just so people are aware, we do have communities built for helping people that are going through this. And one of them's totally free to you. So if you go to CEAcommunity.com, it'll take you to the main Civil Engineering Academy free community. We also have communities specifically built for our course members. So whether you're taking the FE or the PE, and you get lifetime access to those private groups. So if you do want to be a mentor and help others, I've noticed that many of our previous course students will jump in there and try to help people that are going through the next round of exams, which is always nice to see. So anyway, Daniel, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Isaac. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. See ya.